I'm Kevin Oeste here at the 2018 PRI show in Indianapolis, Indiana, and the R stands for racing at that show. And to me, one of the great things about this event is you encounter people who race just about anything there is to race with wheels. And one of the most fascinating aspects of racing for me is the land speed stuff. These guys are some of the fastest people on earth. So today we're very fortunate to have assembled a panel of individuals who are very involved with going very, very fast. So I'm going to introduce our panelists from the far end to the near. Starting at the end, we have engine builder Keith Dorton. In front of him is Chris Raschke from ARP. We then have Mr. Steve Watt from Maxwell Industries, Kenny Duttweiler, who's a world famous engine builder, and Mr. Bob Dalton, who pilots the Flashpoint streamliner. So we've got engine builders, racers, and Chris is a team member as well as a manufacturer. So I think the first question is, and I know the answer already, but we'll start with Keith. What's the fascination with salt flats racing?
Well, growing up in the Southeast, I was only be able to read about it and, see things that way. So there's always been a dream of mine to participate. And finally got that opportunity, and, it was strange the first time out there, which was in 2009. Fortunately, my customer didn't know it, but I'd about paid him to do the engine to go. But since then, we've been every year. God willing, I'll be there every year. And we fortunately built up a good client base from it and had a lot of fun doing it.
Chris, what was it for you?
I'd been previously, I think, in '89 with Kenny had a Buick project, and that was the first time I went to the Salt. And it was a lot of fun. Didn't go back, though, for several years until Steve came to me and asked if I would help crew on a Speed Demon. And it's back now. It's my best race of the year. It's the funnest thing I get to do. I get to work with Kenny on the engines and pretty much anywhere Steve wants me to work on the car. So it's really a great opportunity. It's a lot of fun.
Steve?
Well, I moved to Ventura in '95, I think, and one of the first gentlemen I met was Kenny Duttweiler, and I built some headers for his Grand National, his red car, and been doing work for him ever since. And along the road, a project from Ron Main came along. I think the first one I did some headers for his Flatfire. So then Ron's always wanting me to go to the Salt, and I reached sprint cars, so it's like, we don't have time. So pretty soon we do the Echo Fire, and Kenny has me do headers, intercoolers, stuff like that. So finally in '96, I go with Ron to Bonneville, and I took my wife, and we're there, and it's like I'm watching everything happen, but I can't watch. I'm not a good watcher. So I told Ron when I got back, yeah, it's good and all, but it's kind of boring. I have to be working on something. So at that point, he brings everything to the shop, drops it off, and said, okay, we're building Speed Demon. So at that point, he gets some Mopar midget motors and this stuff, and Kenny's building motors, and we're building headers, intercoolers. We got the whole car done and go start Speed Demon, and from then on, it's history.
That's really cool.
We're fortunate to assemble a really good team, too, of people.
I'm seeing a thread here. You're involved with a lot of this, Kenny.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can blame Buick Racing guys way back because they had a harebrained idea of taking some old Buick Skylarks to Bonneville and running them. So I got tagged to do it, and I thought, boy, this doesn't sound like much fun. I'm a drag racer, and why am I going to Bonneville? And I get there, and I finally figure it out. It's drag racing. It's just 5 miles. You don't have a call to the lane at 2 o'clock. You don't miss your qualifying attempt. It's just laid back, easy, and we just make it pressure intensive. But it's our own pressure. We create the pressure, not somebody organizing what we do. So at the end of the day, it's just a lot of fun. And once you do it a couple times, it's just you have to wait 10 months or so to go back. And I'd like to go back in a couple months right now if I could. It's just that much fun.
Yeah. Bob, what got you involved?
See, I was a teenager and working for a guy who helped on a car. Turned out the car was a belly tank with a GMC in it. And I wanted to go, so I took my Camaro, which had a 411 gear, and traded it to a guy with a different gear so I could get some gas mileage to get there. I bought a loaf of bread and some peanut butter because I was going to sleep in my car. I got there, and I was there with Ernie Pereira and Dick Collier, And we actually go to the little place called the Hideaway to have dinner with their friends. Well, their friends were Al Teague on the left of me and George Bentley, and the Markley brothers, Bones and Charlie, and Ernie. And I didn't realize at the time these guys are all the legends out there. So there's a lot of legacy out there. And I was in the teenager, so I went home and started thinking I should build a car. And I knew absolutely nothing. And I apparently still don't, but I started building the Flashpoint car. And we had a Chevy in it I made it a 4-cylinder, a V8 4-cylinder. Took every other piston rod out, ran that, and then I ended up getting a turbo Chevy and got in the club in 1990. I mean, when I first went there, it was about 1979. So in 1990, I got in the club, and then I parked the car after I got in the club and raised kids and went go-kart racing and midget racing and super modified racing and raised my boys, and eventually I told them I'm going to go back and work on my car, and I met my partner Don Jackson, and we put a Hemi in it on alcohol, and eventually we put it on nitro, and then that's what we went 450 this year with. So nitro is life. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
So it ran good, but the Flashpoint car is over 35 years old.
Man, it's unbelievable. So the common thread that we get from all of this is that there's a definite camaraderie and a sense of community among salt flat racers. That, I mean, you have it in every form of racing, but I think it's extra tight at people that race at Bonneville. And Kenny, you mentioned a great point that the track's not open every weekend.
Exactly, and you get to plan for it for a year. You might get a couple of shots at it during that end of the season deal, and it's just like all other forms of racing. You're still working on it the day you leave. These guys are out at the shop. We're pulling an engine off the dyno. It's still hot when it's going in the car, and we've got a year to get to that point. We kind of wonder why we can't be a little more efficient. And, this year the game plan is we're going to be done 3 months early.
Yeah.
And we'll be loading up when we leave.
That's my plan too, as soon as I start building the car.
Yeah. Well, I think what we've all learned is that nobody's going to leave, and Keith was talking about this yesterday, nobody's going to leave 3 months on the table. I mean, if you're done 3 months early.
No, you're not going to, because a lot of it is supplier issues. That bears heavily on stuff. Fortunately this year, doing a new big block engine, and by the time I leave this show, I've got a big block engine with promised parts in 6 to 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that is way better than it's been in the past. So I'm looking forward to that aspect of it. But I got 3 other engines I got to do too. So they just kind of fall in line with it.
So Steve, the considerations of building a car that's supposed to go, over 400 miles an hour. This is a design that you're not going to find in your local library. It's not,
No, it's not.
There's no plan book on doing this stuff. So how do you engineer these things to go fast, safely, and smoothly?
Well, the new Speed Demon was done out of basically everything we learned from what we screwed up before. So we've broken everything in the world on that car. We've blown up stuff. We've tore drive shafts out. We've tore transmissions out. And as we move along and figure out what caused them, we just keep moving forward. When we crashed our car in 2014, George Poteet, which is, without him, we wouldn't be able to do this. He came to me and said, hey, you want to build a new car? And Kenny and Chris and I, we all work on the car, and we all talk all the time, and we all have issues that we wanted to fix. And when we got the new car, we wanted to move the motor forward, we wanted to get everything lower, everything we got to do, we got a fresh sheet of paper and we did it in 9.5 months.
That's moving. But, I mean, chassis members aside, you have to ask different types of questions of suppliers, because this isn't, top fuel drag racing, the speeds are getting close, but that's for this long.
Yeah.
Not 5 miles.
Yeah, the suppliers we have are like Brown and Miller hose, FK rod ends. I mean, when we talk to them about the Speed Demon, it's like, well, what do you need? I said, I need the best, the baddest stuff you got. And we have it. We have everything that the best we can get. I mean, there's nothing left on the table. So a lot of it has to do with safety. So
Right.
we've invented a lot of safety issues where if the car goes into yaw, it automatically pulls the parachutes and shuts the motor off. Whenever he shuts the motor off at the end, because it heat sinks so bad because everything's glowing red, we have water tanks from the water in the front and the ice tanks from the intercooler spray all over the motor compartment to control some heat. So it's stuff that, I know I've talked with Bob about it. Bob and I are good friends. I talked to him right before he crashed his car. I said, now just go down there and you can beat our record. Just don't go crazy. And I hear he crashed the thing.
Well, we had him covered.
Got
He
greedy.
had us
We had him
Got
covered.
greedy.
He had us in the hole.
And here's the bad. Here, I'll tell you a story. So I got engaged at the Roadster show. And we decided we're going to get married at the Salt Flats. And then I tell my fiance, I got to focus on beating George. So I can't do this right now. I got to focus. She would not have it.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
But she still. So we go to Speed Week. We're kicking blower belts off. She's like, okay, I break up with you. You can stop throwing the blower belts off. Because she's thinking I was blowing up the car so I wouldn't have to get married. So we're there. We are. We went 450, 436.
Yeah.
We're qualified. We're in lane. We're about to take off. And I'm sitting there going, I start singing in the car. Going to the chapel and we're going to get married. And she goes, shut up, you're going to jinx it. And sure as enough,
Yeah.
there I go. Saunter down there, entering the 4 mile. I'm just happy as a clam. And suddenly the car like blows a tire, turns and crashes. And she's like, I could hear her voice. I told you, shut up. So this time I'm going to have to do that without, I guess I can't put George in front of my girlfriend no more, or my fiance. So I'll have to get that going on pretty quick here.
Well, not that you had anything to do with the tire blowing.
Oh, I had everything to do with it. I under-engineered the body panel. The mount, I did it. And the body panel rubbed the tire. It was not the tire manufacturer's problem. It was mine.
Well, I guess my point being, it wasn't in the moment.
Oh, no.
So that body panel was done long before you made it there.
Oh, yeah. It was,
Right.
yeah, about $1 worth of tubing would have fixed that
What
problem.
happens is the faster you go, the more the tires go.
Yes.
As we found with our car earlier on, once you get to the 420, 440, 450 range, you really got to make sure, because we had front tires rubbed one time at FIA event.
An inch and a half away from each other.
Yeah, they're
Right.
an inch and a half away from each other and they touch. So once we started getting tire data, we have our tires spun to 500, and the guy will give us data of incrementally how big they get. And actually the circumference of our rear tire grows 6 inches at 500. So that's an inch per side on a 30-inch tire.
But
So,
an inch at 400.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, plus you need clearance.
So it's like exponential the faster you go. So you really got to be careful what clearance is and stuff, because once something goes wrong that fast, I mean, you're just lumped for the ride.
Yeah, it's
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you pretty much don't have much to think about. People say, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking about, I'm crashing. And then I'm thinking about, that's the sky. Uh-oh. The ground is surely going to follow this. so it did. So no, it was entertaining.
Well,
Yeah.
the great thing is, obviously, you were able to, come away from that experience and be here today.
Well, I was talking to Steve within hours. We were
Yeah,
talking about,
not
what do you
even
think
an hour later.
happened? And we talked about tires and front end suspension,
Yeah.
and he gave me some insight that I think is really the problem. So we're going to go fix it.
Dave Spengler called me a couple weeks ago and he says, hey, what are you guys doing with your tires? Because we've never had a tire issue, thank God. And Spengler, they got stuff that was rubbing on their car, so he said, well, we need to all stay in touch and kind of get a kind of a system. All the cars that are going over 400 are all going to run into the same problem that we've run into a few years ago. So we probably got 48 or 49 runs over 400. So it's pretty serious business. I mean,
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, you can hold your breath for 55 seconds. I do it all the time. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
I'm going to start doing
until that thing goes through the lights and the chute comes out, there's no smoke, and then I can breathe.
And at that speed, then you're covering that last mile in under 8 seconds too.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
just figure,
It's pretty fast.
you're if you make a mistake here, you're going to be a mile down the road by the time you get
By the way, the wreckage was 1.25 miles.
Is that right?
From the first part of the part to where I ended, it was 1.25 miles. It was just fairly spectacular. You think about it. I mean, how many guys can say they wrecked over 1.25 miles?
Well, and by his math, that took 15 seconds.
Yeah,
You know.
wasn't very long.
Right.
Ours wasn't quite that long. Ours was just over a mile.
Yeah. Well, let's not start that competition.
Oh, we already have it.
The debris field.
I've got the record, so we got that one covered for now.
When you were talking about the conditions of salt, and I know Chris keeps me up to speed with Facebook posts and updates of what's going on out there. Where is the condition of the salt today? It sounds like guys are going fast and things are going pretty well. But how much does this change? And I know it rained a lot this past year, and that kind of screwed things up. But
Well, it was dramatically better than it's ever been for us in the time frame that we run. We typically spin the rear tire to about 430. We call it going 1-to-1 when the front and rear tire speeds match or there's no slip. And this year we were maybe 2 miles and it was locked up. So all that did was, I was telling Bob, if you've got a 5-mile fuse on your program and now you up everything by a mile, the fuse is not long enough. And the traction was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I think the reality is, because I've been there since the 70s, is that there's a bend in the road and you drive another 2 miles to get out there. At the bend in the road, it used to be salt. Now it's dirt, and things are growing. And the salt traction was very good, but the salt was very, 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 very thin. And so the salt it's going away. There's a problem with some of the issues there, but the traction was very good because I think it was so thin and it was such a dry year. And next year could be different. I mean, this is the ultimate. Like if you race dirt like I used to, it's the ultimate challenge because we can go from a year ago where it was nothing. There's nothing to get a hold of, to this year where it was phenomenal. To next year it could be nothing again, but the salt itself had phenomenal traction. It just was very, very, very thin.
yeah, interesting. Well, so that's a great point. So now you've got an annual race. You don't have a weekend track to go test and tune, and you don't know what the track's going to look like, right?
Now,
Yeah. So, Chris, you and I have talked about what it's like to be part of that team that preps the car. Considering the differences that you might be up against, what's the scope of different things you're doing when you're there?
Well, this last time out, we were changing engines. So I might be doing a gear change, and we're swapping engine size. Everything on the car. Steve took the sprint car experience that he has in building those cars, and we just looked at everything to make everything simpler to work on and safer. And we can do an engine change in about an hour and 20 minutes. Pulling it in. If we totally burned it up, we might take a 24-hour turnaround to rebuild all the wiring harnesses, and we can make the hoses at the track. We have a very nice ARP fastener cabinet, and we do use all the stainless on the car. So the car is actually a fastener showcase, the Speed Demon is, and it uses a wide range of our stuff off the catalog and some custom pieces that Steve needed for the suspension. But everything about the cars is just, it's friendly to work on, easy. Steve assembled a lot of spares for the car, so if we do have an issue, we got something on there to fix it.
Yeah. I've seen the car. The car is amazing, and it's obviously one of the newer streamliners. So it's really interesting to see, from what you started with to where we're at today. And I did notice that it does have, engineering to, like you said, be easier to work on and access. It's kind of modular the way everything comes together. When something, happens to the car, what you mentioned that you don't have somebody on the PA calling everybody to the staging lanes. What's the timing like on something like that, where you have to have everything done?
As soon as we can. Daylight's burning. We got to go.
So that's it.
We're there to go racing.
You're only there for 6 or 7 days. 7 days
9
is the whole
o'clock in the
season.
morning, we know we can be running in the afternoon. Our drop dead time might be 4 in the afternoon if we had to do an engine change, and we were maybe do a record attempt deal. Well, we know we can't go to impound and be ready for the morning, so we have a cutoff point. But if we're just running laps, we've been starting line at 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah. There's a lot of people with the mentality out there. It's just pretty laid back, and I think when I started, some of the team was a pretty large team, and there was a lot of laid back in the deal, and I want to go, and because I'm not there to sit around. And now the team, it's Steve's got it narrowed down to some pretty key people, and they're all quality people that can work on any part of the car. And we constantly are going. We're not hanging out, sitting around.
And the unique thing about Bonneville is that it's something to everybody. There's like 600 entries. Okay, these guys represent probably the cream of the crop. But there's also mom and pop deals there. There's a dads and sons up there. And right now today, there's somebody working somewhere in a garage on an Austin Healey or some kind of car that you wouldn't think of at Bonneville car, because everything is up there. Everything you can think of. And what's good about Bonneville, like Streamliner class that we run in, it's beyond NHRA top fuel. The rules are 4 tires, not in a line, otherwise it's a motorcycle. That's the rules for a Streamliner. There's no other rules. Fuel class, anything that's not their gasoline.
That's amazing. Yeah.
You want to run a supercharger? You want a blown class? Is anything that pushes air into the engine, whether it's a PSI blower, a high helix type blower, a turbocharger in their case, an all top fuel blower like in our case, or if you want to create your own, you can do it. It's not NHRA telling you can't do it.
Sure.
So the ultimate top fuel class is really the class that we run, which is run what you brung 4 times. Do what you want to do. There's no Streamliner up there that looks like another Streamliner, because everybody's imagination runs wild. I have this huge wing on the car. I have nitromethane. These guys have huge turbos and intercoolers and probably the top technology in the world as far as making a car go down the track. They have a great team. Steve's got the car. It has so much adjustment on suspension, and he manufactures a shock dyno. So his shocks are dialed right on for that deal. So when they go up there and we talk about the changes they do besides engines, for a given track condition, Steve can tune the car suspension-wise, which is brilliant. So the car runs very, very well, and the results show it. But there's another part of Bonneville, which is I call it the legacy guys, the wheelies with the Roadster on nitro and a Chevrolet with 4 cylinders running down there, or there's all sorts of competitors there that are enjoying it. We just happen to be the crazy ones who want to go really stupid fast, where no one's gone before. And we can't forget the turbine car. I mean, honestly,
Kicked our butt.
they kicked your butt this year. I mean, I knew the turbine car back in the day. George and these guys had never seen the turbine car. The turbine car went 500 out the back.
Yeah.
You cannot.
It showed up.
They finally got the fuel system right. 500 miles an hour. I went up there, watched it. The parachute came out. There was like a sonic boom when that thing hit. One of them flew off, didn't make it.
Yeah.
And it made it. It landed on the salt. Didn't stop the car. The car did stop. They have carbon brakes. A phenomenal build by the Vescos. They've been around forever. Another build that's phenomenal coming along is Eddie's Chop Shop. It's a little 4-wheel drive LS turbo deal. He's shooting for everybody. He doesn't have the financial backing everyone has, but he went up there and went 400 on gas this year.
Yeah, that's screaming.
Phenomenal, And he's got 1 or 2 guys, or maybe 3 guys helping him, but pretty much he built the car. And you got to give that guy credit. That's what I'm talking about. The other part of Bonneville, the guys in the shops building
Sure,
stuff.
yeah, right.
There's a lot of guys in right now working somewhere. I mean, the Summers Brothers car was built in a fruit shack, right? And so you have to, or fruit stand. So you have to somewhat stand back and go, wow, it's more. It's probably the worst drug there is.
Definitely a hook, yeah.
Going fast is, and especially in that respect.
Well, I spoke to George, and he was getting an award for something, and he said, Bob, he said, Bob, this ain't real. He said, Bonneville's the only real racing. And none of us sit back and say, well, we had a 10th place car today and we got 5th place. We're pretty happy about that.
Yeah, you don't hear that.
You don't hear that up there. You hear either you are or you aren't.
Right.
Currently, they are the record holder in my class.
Right.
I'm the guy that crashed. So,
Yeah.
but when I needed something, Steve's right there. Here, you need this? Go get it. Go, and then he comes over looking for stuff, and there's a camaraderie because it's Bonneville. You're in a very desolate place.
You're basically on the moon. You can't just go down the street.
Well, actually, you go down
store.
you go to their parts store.
Well, they have a parts store.
They have an ARP parts store.
A mobile one.
Every bolt I think ARP makes is there.
Well, that's
And so you go over. They got hoses. They have stuff, and they're an amazing group. They loan anybody can go in there and ask for help, and they help. So it's a great place. I don't think they do that in NASCAR. I can't, or I don't think in NHRA that happens.
Yeah, and especially not to that level. We were talking the other day, Keith, about this stuff that you've been working on, and that SB2 Chevy-powered 32. What type of approach do you take when you build an engine for Bonneville? Because to me, it almost is reminiscent of a marine application in many ways.
Yes, and first of all, there's a little misconception about land speed racing from other people, other forms of motorsports. Being from the South again, they say, well, how hard can it be? You got 5 miles, we got to do it in a quarter mile or something, or you don't have to turn left and right. Anybody can do it. And boy, I love it when some of those guys come out there and they get brought to their knees, because I've been there, and as well as all of us, I didn't have quite that mentality about how hard it could be, but some of the other forms of motorsports that I have been and currently are involved in, pretty challenging too. A lot of variables. The driver, and they don't give the driver of a land speed car any credit either. Of course, sometimes I've said that God gave us drivers for left side weight. And, so they don't. A lot of them don't like me for that, but no, I don't prepare a lot different, other than we know it's got to last. But that's my background. We had to run 500 miles or such. So we were maybe a little ahead of the curve on the durability thing. But the great thing is, just like you got 4 classes, same way with all the classes. We don't have our hands tied like we do with NASCAR and NHRA and even the weekly racetracks. Yeah. So it's an engine builder's dream as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Well,
but it will humble you.
And Keith, as an engine builder there, he had, I don't know how many engines one year, but he had a 4-turbo Duramax diesel in one car, and he had 2 or 3 other vehicles at the same time. So he was running around pretty good.
Yeah,
trying to take care of all
I really envy these guys going as fast as they do, but we had 7 teams this year, and my son and myself was working. The rental car, I kept track of it. I was just shy of 500 miles on the salt. We knew how far it was back
And what rental company was that?
It was a friend car we borrowed. I got confused there. But no, it's as hard a work as you'll do. But it's a great bunch of people. Most of them are what you might call amateurs and doing it for fun, which is great. And the first time that I was fortunate enough to go to Tech, we'd qualified, and we were needing fuel, and so we got the official. He'll come over there and he'll tape bring you fuel, tape your tank back up, and so forth. So we were sitting there, and I was kind of nervous but I'd been through a lot of techs, and they ain't all been pretty. But here come this guy from SCTA. Well, I probably shouldn't say, here come this tech guy. And he was in, he had his shirt on, Bermuda shorts, flip-flops, carrying a Corona. And I said, this is pretty cool.
It's going to be easy.
Yeah. No, and it's not. Their tech is tough. It's a dangerous sport, like any other form of motorsports. But as an outsider, I'm as impressed as the way things are handled there as any other thing I've been involved in.
When you had 7 different teams there, how many, like Chris was alluding, how many different classes or engines were you having to shift between to kind of oversee?
We didn't have any two the same.
Right.
If it was roadsters, a streamliner, the diesel truck, rear engine cars.
That's an
Door
exercise in mental
slammers.
dexterity there. To
Yes.
stay on top of
Well,
all those.
that's the great part about Bonneville is there's so many different cars, so many different people, personalities. I'm the crazy one. The driver. I'm the left side weight.
Right.
No, but you talk to NASCAR fans and go like, "Oh, those NASCAR guys go 200. That's so cute. I shift in second gear about then."
Yeah.
Your top fuel car goes 330. I'm gonna get high gear about 350 here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cute when they talk about that stuff. But the great thing about Bonneville is the diversity of cars. It's just phenomenal. A person could probably walk around the whole week and not see every different type of car there. It's a unique place. It's a very difficult place when things go wrong. Right, Steve?
They always do, yeah.
When you're welding up your intercooler, and you're like, what the?
Yeah.
And almost passed out from the exhaust fumes from the generator in the trailer.
Right.
It's raining outside.
No, it's when things go bad at Bonneville, you might as well be in the middle of the Baja somewhere, just wishing you were dead. But when things go good, it's pretty good.
Well, and I think that's a testament to the people that are involved in your case in specific. The quality of the team members, you really find out who knows their stuff when
Right.
you can be in the middle of nowhere and pull it all back together and go run and run a number.
Well, here's the interesting note. I was running at the USF4A meet when I crashed, and I watched the video. I hit the ground. Well, I did my little gainer flip flat. People can find it at the Flashpoint Streamliner Facebook page. But when I finally crashed and stopped, it wasn't probably 15 seconds until an official was on top of me. I mean, 15 seconds
Wow.
in the middle of the salt flats, and they're there on top of me. And I can get out of the car and walk back, turn the battery off, because that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, one left.
Yeah. It's an interesting point. I didn't even look to see if the battery's in the car. But I just turned it off. It was in the car, actually, when I think about it. But my race pack data wasn't. It left the building. But no, it was amazing how the officials, the people with SCTA, USF4A, take care of us. I've never been so tight in my seatbelt. They gave me one last tug before I took off. And the seatbelts never moved. I was just crashing around there, looking at the scenery, enjoying the ride.
Yeah.
And I jumped out of the car, had a little bruise on my forehead, and it's 427. You would think it'd be worse than that.
Oh yeah.
But the cars are built to their specifications. They're very strong. George went flying too at 370, so I got him on one record there. I got one record of George.
Well, and I think that's a point too to clarify. There might not be rules, but there's definitely standards.
There's safety standards that are phenomenal. You have to be able to get out of the car with a certain amount of time because they're worried about fire. I didn't have to worry about much of my body yet because it was gone. But no, the body of the car was gone, so it was easy to get out, right? But I think, Steve, when George crashed, you were right there almost.
Yeah, I think Nick and Kenny Duttweiler, I think he was there. I mean, that car was barely stopped and he was there.
Right.
And we rolled up. We were at this car crashed at the 3 mile. I was at the 5 mile. It met me at the 4 mile. As we were coming, we seen it. So we knew something was going on, so we took off. And when I got there, Nick was already getting George out of the car. And the only reason he couldn't get out of the car is Tom's device got caught on the head fat, but he rolled out, got there, and he was sitting there getting with the old. I said, "You all right?" I said, "I think so." Got up, went to the ambulance, and I was sitting back there, and he said, "Hey, Steve, George wants to talk to you." All right. I go in the back of the ambulance. What do you need, George? He's like, "Can you fix that thing?" I said, "I could probably fix it, George, but not today."
That's the funny thing,
So he went to the hospital, got checked out, was back there signing autographs the next day.
So I get out of the car and I'm asking them, how fast did I go? And they're looking at me like I'm speaking French. All these officials or these safety guys I'm like, how fast did I go?
Well,
Did I get the record? I don't want to do this for nothing.
no, just because you had the accident doesn't mean you changed why you were there.
Well, I was, as I tell people, I was 6 seconds from glory or getting married. But no, I was 6 seconds from actually breaking the record. Maybe 4 seconds I got to crash through the timing.
Yeah, but
Probably
but
not. I might have flown over the. I probably would have flown over.
That's the reality of racing.
Yeah.
Is you did.
Yeah, it's it kind of a little disappointing.
Right, yeah.
But the good part was we jumped out of the car, started looking at it, and the cage wasn't even really affected. There's the wing struts helped the car not pencil roll. So there's certain things I learned. I was talking to Steve probably within a few hours of that, saying, "Hey, what do you think? This happened, and the car did this." And Steve's like, "I think you should check your front end." So the front end's actually what crashed the car. This flat tire was just an inconvenient moment.
Yeah.
But
It's again piles on the learning experiences. Some are harder to learn than others.
well, as we,
They cost more.
Well, they cost more, they take more time.
Yeah.
But I want to quickly reflect on something that you brought up, Kenny, that you guys go 1-to-1 halfway down the track when you finally get traction, right? So that's a concept that people that don't race at that level might not get their handle on. Let's talk specifically, what kind of power does that thing make?
Well, the engine would ultimately make 26, 2800, depending on how much boost we command. Because we literally drive the car. George steers it, holds the throttle wide open, makes the gear changes. The computer looks at wheel speed and wheel spin, and the engine is looking at manifold pressure allotments as it goes down the track. So we're feeding the power to it constantly, and then at about 3.5 miles, 4 miles down, depending on the traction, we'll amp the boost up, and it might be making 1600 at that point, and it'll go 25, 2600.
So it's a nice linear progression
Yeah,
of power.
you have to. It really is a 5-mile drag race. Nothing different. The car's got to be a car that thinks it's a drag race car. Like you're talking about the 4-link suspension. We put a Rick Jones adjustable 4-link setup in it because the car originally had kind of a quasi 4-link, but the instant center was pointing at the moon, so it meant it did nothing. So now we can actually alter those instant centers, and we can kind of tell because we'll tear all the tire up on the thing if we get it wrong. But the guys used to push off with an old Ford diesel pickup, and they'd almost be out of sight before you hear the car start to cackle and go. And I'm thinking, well, they give him 5 miles, why is he only running 4? So that ultimately led to a 7-speed transmission with a granny gear in it. George leaves the push truck at 30. And instead of 60, he leaves it at 300 feet instead of 1,000 feet. And we've tried to put that mentality in it. You've only been allowed 5 miles, use it all.
Sure.
And it worked because incrementally every year we've picked up 15 or 20 miles an hour from the previous year, essentially with just thinking more about how are we going to get there faster. One of the conspiracies is if you get to the middle point too fast, you might not have an exit speed as fast as you'd like.
Well, sure, then it becomes a bracket race.
Yeah,
You might run out of steam before the end of the track.
and and when you look at the engine combinations, I've got a Pro Mod engine, NHRA Pro Mod engine, and the difference between it and the Bonneville engine, other than it's a big block, not a small block, it has aluminum rods instead of steel. It has another point in compression. It has the same turbos. Everything else, the camshafts, I mean, they're all. The engine can be a drag race engine during the off season and go to Bonneville for
Still
speed
do
weeks.
okay.
Because that's the only way you make that kind of power is you have to put them on the edge.
Yeah. Well, so in the 10-month, off season, how much, R&D, or simulation or guessing or whatever it is can you do because you can't be there?
I think this year we're going to implement a tool we've had forever but never used. The dynamometer actually has the ability to replicate the run. Mm-hmm. You can program it, and it will emulate the gear changes. It'll emulate the boost curve, the whole thing. But we've never got an engine done in time that if we did this and hurt it, that we could go back and fix it.
Gotcha.
So this year the goal is to get the things running in March and start running some of these emulations on the dyno, because I have one customer that runs a Roadster and it had a real small displacement V8 in it, high RPM thing, and the valve train became a major issue. If I'd make a 20-second pull on the dyno, something would be loose in the valve train. So over the fixed period time, the final deal was ship date's coming up in a week, and is it really done? So I ran 3 5-mile back-to-back passes with the engine shift points at 9,500, and it was kind of intimidating. And, it's a minute and a half, 2 minutes, that thing doing this. Then you go out and pull the valve covers off, and everything is still bolted down. You kind of smile, you put the valve covers on, and you're done. But it takes that level of testing if you want to even be able to assure yourself that yes, we can get there, and it should go 5 miles, Because
Right.
otherwise it's a guessing game. You're just crossing your fingers and hoping.
Well, that's just it, And I've been to, some other form of race shops. I think it was Dan Gurney's shop where they had a setup where they could simulate any track, any situation. They could run the car the whole race, by pushing a button and learn from that. And, you guys don't have that ability.
We're not quite that sophisticated, but at least we can duplicate Bonneville.
Yeah. What's interesting is that, again, this is the fun part about Bonneville. This technology at the Speed Demon level, which is phenomenal because of George. And then you got little old me just dumping nitro by the gallons. We buy it by the drums and dump it in there and just give it a gas and go.
Hold on, yeah.
And put the wing up and hold it, and make some thunder.
Yeah.
I told George's other partner, Ron, one time, said, "You guys go 400, but it's the wrong sound, man." He goes,
Oh, you hear the air braking.
I start my car up at the starting line. There's the 5 mile going, here comes Flashpoint. Because the nitro hemi makes a lot of noise, and it's spectacular. And honestly, I got in the 200 mile an hour club with a turbocharger. And turbochargers are a lot different now than they were in 1990. Actually, a lot different than they were 5 years ago. And I wanted to bring back the sound of Altig and Nolan White, that blown nitro sound for 5 miles. If you hear that, you'll be a believer in that sound. But when you see their performance, you have to be a believer in Kenny Duttweiler and Steve. They get that thing to the other end more than anybody else, over 400 miles an hour. It's very impressive. Then again, it's got the long sound.
We benefit from one thing that a lot of guys don't have, and that's about 100 channels of data.
Sure.
And we have one guy that's in the trailer for 3 or 4 hours, pouring over that.
Just going through it.
I do the 15-minute quick tour, and then
Try to make some decisions.
we start making decisions, and it's just, you have to rely on technology at some point if you want to be consistent. And this year we'll have another 18 or 20 channels of good information.
Yeah.
And the sad part is, you kind of partition these things off in time frames. You say, well, this year we got time, we can do this. But then this year we just created a list. This will get done this year instead of talking about it. And it just come down to, we needed last year to get our mind straight on, because
But you guys had the worst year ever.
That was the longest drive home I ever had.
I've never seen so much carnage.
Yeah, and it was, some of it was self-inflicted, some of it was just R&D.
Stuff happens.
Changing gears a little bit. A couple years ago, I guess in the early 2000s, GM was going to go to the Salt with a Saturn. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Ron Manger remembers it well.
Well, before that happened, I was working for Hot Rod TV at that time, and we got a press release from GM saying we're going to the Salt. And we had an interesting conversation internally about what the ramifications were, and it really boiled down to, and I've got, I'm not saying anything for or against that program at all, but I thought there was two possible outcomes. It was either A, they set a record with the car, and everybody goes, well, great, you're GM, of course you set a record with the car. Or B, they don't set a record, and everybody goes, you're GM, and you didn't set a record with the car, what happened, right? So the takeaway from that is, we don't have the giant companies, giant sponsorships, giant, marketing in Bonneville. Is that good or bad?
Good. We don't need
Definitely
it.
good.
And honestly, when Ron was running the Ecotech engines,
Yeah.
we were there. I think it was the second year that they ran that Chevrolet thing.
Yeah.
They were over there borrowing pistons from us. Here we're the little guys, and we're making laps like the ever-ready bunny, and they're out there blowing everything up they brought. So just because it's GM or Ford or Chrysler, it doesn't mean that they have a lock on it. The F1 guy showed up and set a record with a engine, a small displacement engine, under 180 inches. They were very secretive. Nobody could look at anything, all that kind of. We show up with a midget motor, Dodge midget engine, and take the record away from them.
Yeah.
So our budget's a penny on the dollar to theirs.
Yeah.
So you don't automatically just go to Bonneville with a pedigree and assume you're going to be a hero.
Well, and that was the point, because it's obviously not all of GM's resources there with trailers of engineers. It's a couple guys doing it, but there was a perception of, well, if you got this big banner, what is the public going to take away from that?
Well, and truly, the guys are handicapped because the bean counters at GM weren't giving them all the resources they needed.
Well, sure. Yeah.
They generally just give you some money and say, "Here you go, kid. Go do something with it."
Yeah.
Well, I am my own bean counter, and my bean counter says you're broke.
Yeah, right.
But no, the thing is, you got to remember, as far as of terminal velocity, I think these guys got it about 460.
464.
464 miles an hour with pistons going up and down. I went 451, pistons going up and down. That was my first time on nitro, honestly. I think Danny went in that range, 450 something.
Yeah.
Birkland back in the day went around 450 something. So we're not talking Lamborghini, Ferrari, General Motors, Chevrolet, any big team. It's like guys who are just what I call normal guys, which I don't know if we're all normal. My fiance says I'm not.
Yeah, right.
Ron says I'm not. So, but no, anybody can do what we're doing. Anybody who wants to take the time to work, because all it is work.
And it's really
hours.
going to be tough for somebody to go and their first time go to Bonneville and actually set the world on fire. There's a lot to it. I mean,
Well, that's like what Keith was saying. It ain't that easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
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 Well,
When I
he's
got
not
there and we started doing stuff, and that's like, man, how the hell did we break that?
right.
Never
Well,
seen
Keith
that
was saying about that you get guys there. Oh, it's so easy, drag racers, and we'd be sitting on the line, and go, oh, here comes a drag racer. Watch this 1-2 shift, and then the 3-4 shift. What do you think? You gonna make it? No, I don't think so. 3-4 or 2-3 shift, guy spins out. Right? You can tell a drag racer at Bonneville generally at the end of first gear because they're pointed the wrong direction. Right? I mean, it's seriously, you got to. I mean, my car, I'm kind of babying it a little bit. It's about 200, and then after that, I'm on it because the wing's working. But what Kenny's saying, you probably only have 400 horsepower in first gear, 500.
Not very much. I mean, we cripple it pretty good.
Right.
And over time, you figure out how to gear the thing to get rid of some of the wheel torque so that you can get after it harder. It's almost a trade-off. You can run a fairly short gear and not give it a lot of power, or you can run a really tall gear and give it a lot of power.
Right.
At the end of 1,000 feet, you're running about the same speed.
Right.
It's just easier to drive when it doesn't spin the tire.
When I first went to Bonneville, a lot of the cars were running 2 speeds.
Yeah.
I mean, you take first gear, the Larson Cummins car, get up there, and you hear like, and you're like, what are they doing? But if you hop it up, and I know what they're doing, they're pointing the wrong direction. So they understood that where you're at right now.
So to kind of wrap this up, what would you guys? We'll just kind of go down the line. What would you tell somebody who's never done it, who's interested?
So don't take anything for granted, for sure. Bring your best stock, and be prepared to get back home with your tail between your legs. We were fortunate enough that one of our customers that rented the ride to a father and a son, they were attorneys. I mean, nothing wrong with attorneys, but they weren't car guys. They wanted a red hat. The short and the story, they both left with a red hat. Their first trip to Bonneville. I was there in tech, and one of the tech guys said, how long you guys been doing this? And the father and son were in tech at the same time, 2 different cars, but they rented the ride. And the daddy or the son, one of those, said, since yesterday. And he said, do you know how long I came out here before I got a record? It was decades. Sure. And I really hated that, because they left there thinking, this is a piece of cake, and it's truly not. And one thing from my point, I can't help but sit here and think, my first time, when I first stepped on the salt, I don't know how long I stood there, but I thought, the history, the people that I owe what I do for a living to, because they were here. Fred Carrillo, Vic Sr., and the guys that made that noise that we all love, Right. We probably wouldn't be here at this PRI if it wasn't for those pioneers. And and I still feel it when I go out there.
I think that if you go out to the salt, you need to talk to the people that have been going for 20, 30 years, and they're going to give you a lot of help and advice, and you should probably take it. And everybody's there to help, and everybody wants to see you get a record. You're just not going to get one every time.
I kind of see the same way. I was very fortunate to go to the salt for the first time with Ron Main. He's been going forever, very seasoned veteran, knew everybody, knew all what was going on. And yet, the first time I went to work on a car, I had a couple of guys from the shop that worked on the car, and Ron on the radio, your guys are in the wrong spot again, Ron. You got to go fetch your guys, because there is salt etiquette. So we had no idea. We're sprint car guys, right? We just, it's wide open, let's go. There's nothing in front of us. We can go as fast as we want. So we're on the course. It's really important probably to go with somebody because you can drive across the course and not even know it. So, but I've been very fortunate to start there and end up where I am sitting here today. A lot of great people around me. We've assembled a lot of great people on the team. We have probably the best owner you could ever possibly have in Bonneville, and George Poteet. I mean, he enables Kenny and I and Chris and all of us to do what we do, which is basically R&D and go to Bonneville every year. And when we get home, we're going to look at an intake manifold when we leave here. And when I get home, I got to hit the ground running. I got to build headers, build intercoolers. I mean, it's on from now on until we get to Bonneville.
What would you tell somebody?
Well, don't do it like I did it. Actually go to Bonneville and see what it's all about. Get some ideas about what you're going to do. You better create a real budget and pick a class that's not really highly competitive. I mean, that makes it a lot easier to feel like you've accomplished something. We were lucky enough to go out there with some old junk Monzas or Skylarks and some Buick V6 engines and actually set a couple of records. But in all fairness, they were probably pretty soft classes, because we didn't do it on the intelligence aspect of it. We just built something that ran faster than the guy that had previously set the record maybe 5 years prior. So, and probably the most important thing is make sure you got some rooms. I mean, that is the big deal. I mean, we get people all the time that say, yeah, it's on my bucket list. I'm going to go to Bonneville.
Yeah.
And this was like 2 weeks before. And I said, well, do you have room? No. Or the guy that says, last night, I got to go to Bonneville. He said, you better book some rooms. It's just, it's just part of that whole system. Either that or you're sleeping in a pup tent out the end of the road. So, but you have to know what you're up against. I mean, it's just not, You know, you can buy a new car, go to the drag strip, make a run, bracket and run stuff, and you can be horrible at what you're doing, but they're gonna focus you on going down that and coming back. But you get out there, and like Steve says, there's a lot of stuff you've got to learn. I haven't learned any of it. I just rely on that guy over there.
Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you. At least he didn't put you in wells, but we won't talk about it. So, Bonneville, first thing to remember is sunscreen and rims. But when you're there, it's the legacy. I mean, you're standing on the ground that Breedlove ran on. And I hate to say this, guys, but some years from now, they're going to be looking back on, remember that Demon team, George Poteets and all those guys that kicked butt on everything? And, you know, Al Teague, Nolan White, even Ron Main. But there's a lot of legends have been there. And when you're there, it's kind of impressive, but you can't lose sight of what you're doing. And the biggest word I'd give someone is perseverance. And Bonneville will teach you about life. If you can succeed there, you can succeed anywhere, because it is generally fairly difficult. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot you're going to learn, but it's about perseverance and have fun. I mean, don't go up there so serious that you're not getting a record, that you're not enjoying the day. You got to go up there and I would say smell the roses, but you're going to be smelling diesel fuel and smell the nitromethane whenever you can. Every opportunity when a nitro car starts, you go stand by it, you get happy.
I think he likes
Nobody says that about them turbo cars. I just tell you, don't go stand behind no methanol smelling car that's putting out those fumes. You can smell those at a sprint car race. No, but you go to the Bonneville, you just go have a good time, because it's really about the camaraderie of everyone and having fun. And if you're building a car, build something that you can afford to run and have a good time doing. So somewhere, right now, there's somebody working in a little shop, father and son, or a couple of brothers, or sister, or whatever, building a car, working on a car, having plans what they're going to do. Don't give up, because it's the perseverance that gets you there. And I went up there, my first pass, I remember the car got a shake and all this stuff, and I thought, I had looked at my gear charts, but I had so many Dream Wheels charts that I pulled off, and there was my wife in the truck. Like, you went 70. You went 70.
You're a hero.
I went, I didn't know. It had a shake. I thought it was really going fast. 70. And that was in Flashpoint. I'm just telling you that it wasn't always a 70 mile an hour car or a 450 mile an hour car. It went 70 on its first pass. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. But it was the perseverance that got it through that and went fast. And eventually the perseverance is what you build a new one. So it's all about perseverance and work.
Well, some great advice from all of you. I really appreciate you all joining us today, and I will acknowledge our honorary panelist who wasn't up here, Mr. Ron Main, is in the audience here. We'll all reference him. Thank you for your contributions too. Gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure, and
thank you.
It's something that it's no wonder why Bonneville Racing is so fascinating, because there's so much to be gained from it, and I wish all of you continued success, and we hope the sport grows in the right direction. I'm Kevin Oeste from the 2018 PRI show in Indianapolis. Thanks for watching.